Hello everyone, here's a short demonstration of how I use Blender to create symbols from my actual in-game assets that I can then use in my UI. Okay, so here we have an actual asset from my current game project that I will use to demonstrate my workflow, how I create UI symbols for game assets or for any kind of asset that I need to have some kind of stylized representation for. Usually when I create an asset like this, I like to build them with geometry nodes when it makes sense. Just I can go back and tweak stuff quite fast and easy. But when I export to the game, I flatten my geometry nodes into the object that is the one that I'm actually exporting. So I'm export version here, which is the one we have here, and it's quite low poly in this case because it's a small object and you don't see any close-ups of it. For this render, we don't want it to be low poly, so we're going to make a dedicated version just for the render in question. What I do then is we're going to duplicate this in-game version and modify it a little bit so we can do a stylized render out of it. So I'm going to just move this up here, maybe put it 1 meter away, and this is the UI symbol. So I'm gonna save it up here with the rest. Not gonna be part of export, pod a UI symbol. There we go. And let's add a camera so we can render it out too. So we're gonna move the camera so we have a view of a 45-degree view down at the object in question. So let's use this view here to see through the camera. And let's just move it up here and here, and let's just type it in. -1 meter, 1 meter, 45, and -45. There we go. And okay, if I zoom, oh, I have the camera locked to the view, I think. Let's undo, and let's just change that view there. Turn this one off. And this one apparently disappeared. There we go. And now we can zoom in here a bit. And what I like to do for these kind of renders, this is of course a stylistic choice, but I like to use orthographic camera to get rid of any kind of perspective to sort of flatten it. I just think that works a little bit better. At least for my current project, I thought this was a nice choice. I'm not going to add any lights because we're not going to need that for this kind of render. And if I render this out now, I would just get a black render, of course. But what we can do is to enable the material buffer here and enable the CryptoMatte material buffer. So that means we're going to get the material from this render to work with in the compositing tab. And right now, this object only has one material, I think. Right. Because the colors on this object is set with a texture. And we're going to want to use materials to control our symbol instead. But let's just render this one out so we see what we have to work with first. So I'm going to go to compositing here and I'm going to do render. So we just get this black render, but if we go in here and now add CryptoMatte, and we can pick, sorry, we're going to use the picker, and here is the actual matte now. So now we only have our material, so that is what we see. So we could use this picked material. So if I pick this one now, actually, it doesn't make any difference because we only have one, but then I can use the matte here as our final image to get something that's going to be the illustration, but we want to now separate this into more materials so we can use those to find the edges between our important parts of this object. So I'm just going to take this object here and split it up into a few more materials where it makes sense. So let's just select the lights here, and I'm going to do select similar, and I'm going to go by polygon sides. And are these connected? No, they're not. Well, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to just create a new material and assign it. And let's just give it a viewport so we can easily see what is what. Let's do it purple. And then let's do the same for this one here and just give this one a new material. I'm not going to bother naming them because this is just for this purpose. But let's give this material some viewport color too. There we go. So now I have 3 materials to work with. So if I now go back and make another render, there we already see that we have this one split up. So we got there, now we already see we got this split up in this specific material, and of course we have the other materials too, so now we can pick any part of this object. So if we now have 3 cryptomats, 1 per material, we can control them by themselves, how much we want to see from them. So if you take the first one here, let's just unpick this and pick the light. So that should give us only the lights. And then we do the same here. Unpick this one and pick the inner sphere. So there we have this one. There we go. And finally here we already have this one picked, I think, right? Right. So that's it. So if we combine these back together now, well, they should probably be hooked up here. So we can just use a mix. We use add mode, so we can take not the image but the matte and this one here. So now these two should be combined, right? And then we do it one more time. Take this one here and add it with this one here. So now we have all 3 materials combined. So now it looks like we are back to where we started, but not really, because we can work with them one by one. So by using the delete erode node, we can now shrink how much we see of one material, which is what we were looking for. So by adjusting this value, we can define how much air we want to have between each part or each material. So we can just duplicate this one here. And there we go. For demonstration, could frame this, just organize it. And then just say what this one is. So this is the light. And then we could keep going down here. I'm not going to do that now, but that's always useful to do when revisiting an old file a few months later. And of course we could plug in the alpha here too. So we can use the same image also for the alpha channel. And now it only remains one thing to do. On our rendered version, we want to smooth. We don't want to have this low poly style anymore. So we're going to add a modifier. And we can bounce this up a bit here. And if we go back to compositing now and make a new render, it should be much smoother. There, look at that. So that looks nice. And this would work just fine now as a UI element or artwork for the UI. And what I can do, of course, now, because it's actually based on this one, is that we can animate it or we can rotate it. So if I just do a slight rotation here to some more interesting angle, maybe like this, and re-render it, there, we get a little bit more interesting angle here. Or we could make an entire looping animation if that is what's required for the UI. Well, I guess that wraps it up, and I hope you found this useful. And as usual, any questions, feel free to come to my Discord server, where I'm happy to talk about anything art related, Blender related, or game development related. See you in the next one. Cheers!